Welcome to the Jiu Jitsu Oracle's review of the second day of CJI 2. And what an ending to the day it was. A surprise ending. We got to the finale of the B Team and New Wave final, and we didn't know which way it was going to go. And then it was announced that B Team were the winners. I'm Ross. That's Calum. Calum, I've called this episode a fitting finale. Can you understand why I might call it that?
Yeah, I was kind of thinking fairy tale finale for B Team. I was getting a little bit not emotional, but like reminiscent when the little trailer came in between matches of B Team, like the end of B Team and the music playing. I was like, oh, it's been a good run, even though it's basically the same team just under a different name. And then, for the whole creation of the team to come out of the rivalry with Danaher and his guys, and then for it to end this way is kind of a fairy tale ending for them. And it's kind of a movie ending, like you see these films like Dodgeball or whatever, and it all comes down to this big finale and like some crazy last minute thing happens. It very much feels like a movie, and I'm very satisfied with the ending of it.
I think as a story of the split of the Danaher Death Squad, then the divergence of two teams, B Team being called what they are because they're seen to be the second team as opposed to what was the A Team or New Wave, Gordon's team with Coach John. For B Team to kind of have the final say, to get the final win, I thought was very poetic. And another reason I think the finale is very fitting is because it was controversial and it has given room for plenty of argument to happen. And it's no surprise to see Gordon Ryan being very vocal, or not so much vocal, because it's more typing things on Instagram and sending them out to the world. Gordon very much disagrees with the result. But I think it's part of this story that there is a win for B Team, but it's in very contentious circumstances, and then New Wave can complain or protest about the decision, maybe Gordon specifically, not just New Wave, and that's part of the story. Like, how else would it be apart from bickering between these guys,
Yeah.
Shall we set the scene for what happened in the final? That my idea is that everyone's kind of watched the show. It was free on YouTube, so it will eventually go behind a paywall with Flow Grappling, but I think everyone watching our episode to get our take on it will have seen the show. So I don't want to get into the X's and O's, as it were, of like the individual matches, but I do think it's important to set the scene and then say if we saw anything along the way that's worth noticing. So why don't we go back to the start of the day?
Yeah.
Where New Wave had their semi-final against Atos. New Wave eventually won 2 submissions to 1 to get them through. Give me some thoughts on this New Wave v Atos match, Calum, and then if I think it's worth adding anything else in, I'll come back in. But I'll leave you to chat for a little bit.
Yeah, I think the intensity of everyone was definitely up today. I don't know if that was Craig's offer of the 50k for the subs. I don't know if it was like the higher stakes in the matches, but I think we saw a lot more intensity. Saw that with the first match with Kynan versus Wagner Hocha. I think strategically for John to put Wagner first, thinking that Atos would put a big guy first, was like a very, very smart move. And beforehand, I didn't really think I was that bothered who would win, but I think it comes out when you're watching the match how you're feeling about it, and you kind of realize who you want to win. I realized I wanted Atos to win that match, and then when I saw Wagner who was pulled out against Kaiden, my heart kind of sunk. I was like, oh crap, that's not good for Atos, because Kaiden's one of their best guys, and Wagner is like nigh impossible to submit. So Wagner did a really good job of playing his part, playing his role on the team, which is like to take out one of the top guys on the other side, and he managed to get through with the match with Kynan. And then we saw couple submissions from New Wave. One at the end, finishing up the show, was Giancarlo versus Ronaldo. Really big moment as well was Felipe Pena coming in against an already a little bit exhausted Luke Griffith and just putting it on him right off the bat, managing to get a sub last second, and then another big moment from Dorian, putting the pressure on him after. So overall, really entertaining way to kick off the day. And yeah, New Wave managed to come through in the final with Giancarlo getting that sub.
Okay, so I agree on the Kynan Wagner analysis. Next up was Hulk against Mika. What did you think about the first penalty point for stalling that we saw awarded? And just before you give me your thoughts on that, I'm glad you mentioned Craig giving out the 50 grand submission bonus. The night before the second day, Craig gave a very impassioned speech where he offered the athletes 50,000 for winning by submission, but he was basically saying, please guys, come on, you've got to go for the subs, you've got to go for the wins, you've got to pick up the pace, you've got to try hard. I really felt for him because I don't think, while I've said I enjoyed the first day, if people want to say it was a little bit lackluster compared to what they were hoping for, I hear it. But I felt for Craig, and it's like, but I do think that big rah-rah speech before was very much needed, and fair play to Craig for putting some extra money on top of it. But the Hulk-Mika situation where we saw the first penalty point awarded or taken away from Hulk, and then Mika getting to start in half-guard top. What do you think about that? Was it fair? And secondly, just before you come in, if ultimately there's a big conspiracy to screw New Wave out of the title, why was the Hulk the one penalised in this match and New Wave given the advantage in that situation? Anyway, on you go.
I agree with that latter point, but to go back to the first point, from my understanding, you're supposed to get an official warning before the penalty's thrown out. You know, even though I'm sure Craig spoke to the refs and told them to be more harsh with the stalling, you can't really throw a rule like that out mid-event. So that was my understanding. I think they both got a warning for like mercy grips and really not doing that much on the feet, but it wasn't an official warning from my interpretation. So I think there should have been an official warning before that penalty. Whether the penalty was just or not, I don't know. I think from what I remember, kind of Mika was trying to maybe pull a leg in. Hulk was defending it, but like in those situations when you are defending something from happening, that's all you can really do. You know, like if you're in a chess match and it's check, you can't go then trying to do your own offense. You need to move your king out of the way, and it's the same in jiu-jitsu. So I don't know. I get them wanting to like push on with stuff. It was like the second match of the day. They're maybe wanting to set a precedent with stalling, and I understand that, but yeah, I don't think it was the most just.
No, I think either guy in the match could have been said to be a bit inactive. I think it was a little bit unfortunate for Atos that Hulk was the guy who ate the pen. But I think in sport, if you watch early season football, whether that's soccer or NFL, there will have been rule changes or there will be initiatives given to the refs to change things up. And always early in the season, there are penalties given out that people are up in arms about, but it's been decided that this is now the way the game is going to be played, and someone has to eat the pen. And it's unfortunate, but a commentator did say that. He said, it's just unfortunate that Hulk's the guy that had to eat it. So I'm not, in terms of like the penalty being awarded, I want to say credit to the ref for being brave and doing that, because when you've got Andre Galvao in one corner, it's Hulk against Mika Galvao in the match, on John Danaher in the other corner, whatever you would do, you're dealing with big characters, legends of the sport, etc. It's a tough position to be in. So for the ref to be brave enough to do that, I'm going to salute him for that. I think it's just unfortunate that it went the way it did, and Hulk was the one who suffered for it. But I totally see the argument that, you know, it should have been given or it shouldn't have been given. I'm not really fussed either way. But as it was on the board. So next up was Luke Griffith against Pato. Now, this is a midsection match where you just can get fortunate either way with the guy you pick. Like, I don't think John picked Luke thinking that Andre's definitely picking Pato in this situation. He maybe thought that Andre was going to put Pena in at that point, you know? So it went New Wave's way, that match. And then Felipe Pena, like, this was so good. Like, Felipe Pena, like, the reputation of a sloth-like game, you know? And then he comes out full of fire, and he takes it to Luke, and he puts it on him, and he gets the win. I was just, like, on the edge of my seat. That was awesome. And then for Dorian then to come out, and Pena's a little bit, you know, fatigued from going through that with Luke. And then Dorian just, like, absolutely pours it on Pena, goes after him. Man, that section of this match was so good to watch.
Yeah, 100%. I think those kind of moments, like for Felipe, really show someone's greatness in any sort of sport when the task seems like so difficult and a lot of people would like give up, but then people that are really great just like keep firing at it and just find a way to make it happen, you know, whatever the sport or the situation is. And I think that was the case there. Luke was playing very, very defensive. Things were sweaty in the match. It was getting, you know, the clock was running down. I think Felipe understood that the team really needed him to get that submission for them to stay in the game. And like, even though he kept trying, it kept failing, he kept trying, it kept failing, he just kept at it, and he did eventually get the submission. And then, you know, Dorian Alvarez has just been really amazing all weekend. Definitely the MVP of the 66 kilo division, even just the lighter guys in general, probably what he's been able to do against some of the heavier guys in the tournament, even though he's not had a submission, but like beating a guy like Felipe Pena, even though you would have been somewhat pre-exhausted from the last match, is super, super impressive.
Talking a little, guys, shout out Diego Pato for that reverse De La Riva sort of no-gi lasso sweep on Luke Griffith.
Yeah.
That got me excited. I also wrote in my notes just that it's an aside. We're not going to have time to delve too deep into it in this episode. But in that Pena v Luke match, I wrote at the side, should a 10-8 or a 10-7 count as a submission win for your team? You know, especially like a 10-7. If you go out, absolutely demolish a guy, but don't quite get the sub. Because subs are scored so heavily in the quintet rule set, could it even be you get 2 points for a sub, 1 point for a certain amount of domination in your win? I don't know. I'm just putting it out there because I think we've seen in this event how valuable it is to have a submission and how if you don't get it, you could absolutely wreck your opponent, but it's basically scored a draw and you're both eliminated. So that was just an aside, just something I wrote down. I'm not saying I want to see it, just a thought. Yeah, and then here's a strategic thing. Atos ended up with Ronaldo Jr. as their last guy out. New Wave ended up with Giancarlo Bidoni as their last guy out. I said in my previews, strategically, I would always keep a big guy or a guy big enough who's got the capability of submitting absolutely anyone they come up against as my last guy. So I thought that was a win strategically for New Wave to have Bidoni go out last.
I agree it was a win for them to have, and maybe that was like good part in their strategy earlier on to have him set up there, but at the same time, I think it was still the right thing for Atos to do to put Felipe out against Luke, who had already had some energy.
But if you rerun it, you know, if you put Ronaldo out first against Wagner and they can get a draw, and then you've got Kynan out last against Bidoni, it's maybe a different story, you know? So that's all I'm suggesting. I think John won the tactical battle there. I don't think he won the tactical battle in the final, but we'll get to that.
I think he won the tactical battle from the start against Atos when like he played his Wagner card against Kynan. I think that really made it difficult for Atos going forward.
Yeah. Can we say, actually, we're pushed for time. We've both got training tonight. We're both coaching. Well, I say I'm coaching. I'm running the rolling session. Calum's coaching. But we need to get through these other matches. So New Wave Advanced, B Team versus Australasia. So the thing about this match was initially, I thought, oh, it's done because Bilal Echibari, it was suggested his injury that he received when he was footlocked by Kyle Bame, I think it was, on day one, was going to prevent him from competing in this match. And I thought, well, 4 Australasia guys are only able to compete, 5 B Team guys are able to compete. It's straightforward for B Team. And so we got into the match. Chris Wojcik out first against Lucas Kennard. Okay, it's going to be a leg lock battle. Ended up a draw. Okay, Nicky Rod against Kent. Can we speak about Kenta being an absolute dog?
Yeah.
Was he dog of the weekend?
I think defensive dog of the weekend and offensive dog of the weekend can be Dorian.
Oh, well, maybe defensive dog would be Wagner, given how much he suffered as well. But Kenta's kind of in the middle because he just like he endured. He endured, and then he also had a go. But anyway, I just loved Kenta going up against Nicky Rod, a training partner who he knows is going to give him a tough time. And yeah, I put it on the side here, like, should there be a 50k dog bonus as well? You know, I'm not trying to spend Craig's money for him, but I just thought some of these guys, like with their performances, they weren't going to get the sub, but you know, they certainly added to the thrill of the event. Then we had Declan absolutely smash Ethan, but it was a draw.
So bad for Ethan in that match. You got the shit beat of him in that match. I think you know, fair enough, there was 50k on the line and a potential 200k, but like Declan really tried to kill that guy, and I think that really shows what a difference weight makes in jiu-jitsu when you've got like a big athletic and someone willing to be nasty in a match, and he's got like a 30 odd kilo advantage like that as the result.
Yep. So this was an interesting section to me because you had Ethan against Declan. Declan poured it on, couldn't get the win. It was a draw. Both guys got eliminated. The next up was Victor Hugo against Fabricio, and Victor Hugo got the arm triangle to get the point on the board. So that just shows that, like, if you do have that huge weight advantage, it's super important to hammer it home when you get the chance to. And then I thought that was going to be it. And then it's like, no, Bilal, he's going to make a hero's walk and give it a go for his team. And ultimately, he lost to Victor Hugo as well by arm triangle.
I'd like to know how much of it was for his team and how much of it was because Craig put out the 50k for that day. Maybe that was a motivating factor.
I'll tell you what, Victor Hugo should be cutting Bilal in. Because if Bilal doesn't take that match, Victor Hugo doesn't get a second sub.
Yeah, you'll be buying him a beer, or would have bought him a beer last night in Vegas, I hope.
An expensive beer, right? And then Joseph got a rest. So B team goes through. So then we get the B team v New Wave, sort of like dream scenario for the final that I think a lot of people wanted to see. Before that, 2 things. Helena Cravar beat Sarah Galvao, won by footlock to win the $100,000 tournament for the women. Interesting that she had to come out with a different hairdo for this match because on the first day, her hair was draping all over Adele Fornerino in their match. And then it was said on commentary that Andre Galvao raised that as being an issue and wanted the hair changed. And I think that's fair because, you know, women have to have certain hairdos for MMA. Like we're always seated braided because the long hair can be a problem. So different looking Helena for this match. Took the 2, because it was open scoring, we were able to see what happened, much like the rule set from CJI 1. So Helena won 10-9 for the first 2 rounds. First one was split, second one was unanimous. First round, I maybe had Sarah just ahead of Helena, but I can see it either way. And then in the third round, Helena made it decisive with a footlock finish. Any thoughts on that match?
yeah, it was a good match. I was excited to see the outcome of it. I think, I think Sarah was behind a little bit. It looked like she could have maybe turned the pressure up and won the latter few rounds, but I think, Helena put the stamp on it with that submission, and good victory for her.
Yep. Then we saw a segment with Gabby Garcia and Renato Laranja. All I'll say is I think Gabby's stock continues to go up and Laranja's stock continues to go down. And that's not a jiu-jitsu analysis. So I don't think it's because I said before, in amongst all the negativity I saw the first day, I was going to try and keep my positive mindset through this whole weekend. But I think criticizing someone for really bad comedy is absolutely fine. It's different to the jiu-jitsu on offer. But yeah, probably time to end the Renato Laranja stuff, unless he's being massively produced and putting out short videos. But Gabby Garcia, she's great. She can stick around. Then we saw Chael versus Craig. What do you think about that?
First of all, like just with the walkouts, I thought Craig's like skit was all right, but I didn't really feel the music match. I feel like I don't know. I was kind of expecting what's the tune he always comes out to, the same one as Volk. That like Australian one.
Oh yeah,
You know
yeah,
the one.
yeah.
Yeah. So I was kind of expecting that, but I don't know I don't know if that was his mates or whatever that were playing the band, but it didn't really seem to match like the vibe and the atmosphere. But as far as the match was,
Can I just come in there, Calum, first? I'll just say my note on that was it would be cool if this song had more lyrics, because I pretty much understand that like he wants a Ferrari or something, yeah, like or he's got a Ferrari. But just
I didn't even get
I think
fair play to.
Credit to Craig for trying something production wise. Coming from the bathroom, walking through the fans, having a rapper take him out. He's trying. I thought it was a good effort. And then they gave Chael the mic, and Chael did his Chael thing before the match. It's kind of like what people are there for, right? Because we knew it wasn't going to be much of a contest. So you get Chael doing his Chael Sonnen bad guy shtick. You get Craig playing up to his persona, and then we get the actual roll around on the map, which was unusual, yeah?
Yeah.
The rule.
I mean, like, I didn't actually realize how old Chael was now when they said he was 48. And, like, I see clips of him on his podcast, and he doesn't look that old. I don't know if he maybe does a little bit of touch-up makeup or something like that for that. But he looked quite old when he came out. I was like, oh, he's really older than I thought. As far as the match, I think on the feet, he still looked very sharp. Like, he was very committed with his takedowns, and I think they were legit. As far as the two buggy chokes supposedly rendering him unconscious, I don't know. I've seen many people go to sleep in jiu-jitsu, and I don't know. I don't know if it was because he was in side control, he was able to like maintain somewhat of like a upright posture, but it didn't really look like he'd went to sleep like with the position of his body. Then he seemed to be very aware of where he was and what had happened very quickly. Whereas I know from my experience seeing people that have blacked out, it takes them a little bit of time. So on the one hand, I don't know if it was faked. On the other hand, if it wasn't, I think I would have liked to see Craig play around a little bit more. I was happy to see him not go for the legs and like play his kind of octopusy counter wrestling game. That was fun to see. But Craig has the grappling equivalent of the touch of death. Like you see, like Alex Pereira with his left hook, he just needs to touch it. Craig has that with submissions. If he gets a hold of someone, like they're gonna die. That's just like how his submission mechanics and his body works. So, and I think he knows that. So if they were legit, it was a bit of a shame to see him just smoke him so quickly, because Craig is very capable of getting a somewhat low percentage submission and just squeezing it for 3 seconds and putting someone to sleep. That's how good he is. So if it was legit, it was a bit of a shame. If it wasn't legit, it's just a bit weird. It was a bit weird overall, but I'll let you give your thoughts on it.
I think they should have pro wrestlinged it a bit more. I think they could have worked the shoot, as it were. We all know Craig was going to win and could have won whenever he kind of wanted to. You can do it in a way where it looks real, even if it's some stuff happening in the match might not quite be real. I mean, it's there for a spectacle. I thought when the first buggy choke happened and then Chael sort of came back to, I thought he was going to spring up, grab the microphones, say like, he was just relaxing in the submission. He didn't go, something like that, you know, and then they go again. The problem was it just wasn't produced very well, the whole actual section with them competing. And if it's not massively produced before you start it and you haven't talked through it, maybe Craig just pulled the trigger on it a bit too early. You know, like he didn't. Anyway,
Yeah,
I think we're going too far into it because it was just a little bit of an entertainment segment, wasn't it? So,
yeah. Just one thing,
guys,
I got the sense. Oh, on you go.
no. Well, I was just going to say, guys, if you want that sort of thing produced, give me a shout. I've got some pro wrestling experience. I can help you through it. Maybe make it a better spectacle. But on you go.
I was just gonna say I got the sense as a whole of Craig in the event that, you know, we've heard talks that this is going to be like his last thing, and then he's like riding off into the sunset, not competing or really doing as much to do with jiu-jitsu. And I kind of got that sense from him in the whole event. Like his opening speech was quite quick and sharp and to the point. Like he didn't do his post-match interview with the Chael thing. Didn't really hear from him much at the end. So I don't know. I kind of got the sense that he was quite ready to be done with it. Did you get that sense as well, or is that just something I picked up on?
No, well, I understand why you have that view. I think another way of looking at it might be that he's just being pulled in all manner of directions over the weekend and trying to throw a pre-match, a pre-event speech and a Chael Sonnen match, etc., on top of all the things he's having to do in the background, on top of dealing with all the criticism that came after day one, all this kind of stuff. I think maybe he was just, and the build-up and trying to coordinate a team's event, which is incredibly difficult. I think he's maybe just burnt out, you know, so I really, really hope that he comes back and we get CJI 3, because I just think there's nothing else like it in jiu-jitsu. So yeah, so glad that it happened, and I would really love to see something happen next year. But if Craig does feel that he's burnt out or whatever, I totally understand why. And if you think that maybe affected his inability to give a post-match speech or Joker, I even thought at the end he might come out and you know, hug B team and wish them well, and you know, they're basically going off to become simple man, it sounds like, or simple men. And then Craig goes off and does his thing. I thought, but maybe it was just too much, you know, like there's already enough on the plate, as it were. But yeah, hopefully we'll see Craig come back. And I do think he was like an integral part of the show. So just to see him was important. Can we talk about that final? Definitely. So what we had was Wojcik against Mika up first, went to a draw, both guys out. I think Chris was very disciplined. Mika thrives on being given opportunities from people. Chris didn't give him any. Thought it was a good performance from Chris. Anything else to add? Just bearing in mind we've got about 5 minutes to play with. So
yeah, I think I'll just say on Mika, he was the only guy that we gave 5 stars, and in my opinion, he lost the match to Hulk, and then he had 2 matches that he potentially won by the skin of his teeth. I thought he looked a bit lackluster compared to his normal self, so I don't know what was going on there. Maybe a tough weight cut, maybe something going on in the camp. But yeah, I think Mika's stock maybe went down a little bit. He's kind of losing that aura of invincibility that he maybe had a couple of years ago.
Yeah, okay. I get that viewpoint. I think the matches, so it was DeAndre Corby, Chris Wojcik, Hulk, to come out of those 3 matches with no subs when you're bringing a guy in like Mika Galvao to hopefully be a finisher. I know it's incredibly hard to submit guys that are good, and guys here are good. But Mika, we think, is like his sub percentage is so high, and he's submitted so many like elite competitors over the years that I think that's why he was brought onto the team. So credit to him for getting the wins that he got, but I agree. I would have liked to have seen maybe just a little bit more, and I don't think you're wrong to say that. And I don't think you're being overly harsh with the matches that he had in the way.
Yeah, I mean, I'm measuring Mika by his own.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm measuring Mika by his own previously very high standards.
Yeah, absolutely. Then we had Wagner do what Wagner does and get a draw against Victor Hugo. Oh, this might become important as we go along. So that first match would have been scored 10-9 to Mika. This second match would have been scored 10-9 to Victor. Now, you have to bear in mind that if there's a weight discrepancy of a certain size, you can only win by 10-9. So although by looking at that match, you could say maybe Victor won 10-8, I can't remember the exact weight, but it's like, I know Victor was only able to win this 10-9. So even if you want to make the argument 10-8, okay, I believe it was only 10-9 possible. That's what I've seen post-event. So that's why some people are saying, okay, if certain things were scored 10-8 in this, why not that one? As far as I know, and again, if you don't think I'm right, jump into the comments. And if you want to chat about anything we're bringing up, get into the comments and let us know. But I believe that was only ever going to be scored 10-9 Victor Hugo. Ethan Krellston against Dorian. What a performance from Dorian. Because these are two guys in the same weight class. And then this was 10-9 Dorian. Now, some people are suggesting this should have been 10-8. But I think, while the start of the match very much looked like a 10-8, by the time you get to the end of the match, and Ethan having Dorian in close guard, and then there was like that weird sort of close guard situation where Ethan's latched onto a leg, and then it looks like he was going to take Dorian's back, and then Dorian fought out of it. I could see just with that bit happening why it wasn't a 10-8. I'm not saying I don't hear the calls for it. If people want to give it a 10-8, you can give it. But I understand, and that's the most important thing. I try and get to the place now where I understand why things have happened, even if I disagree with them. I understand why that was a 10-9, but what a performance from Dorian.
Yeah, very impressive performance and very dominant, but I think there was a clear level above in the dominance that Nicky Rod had over Luke Griffith compared to what Dorian had over Ethan.
Okay, so then next up, right, we're in an interesting situation here. Because I think guys have seen the matches individually, so I'm not going to dive into them too much, but I'm going to talk about this last situation, right? So B team, get to the end, get through their three guys. They've got two guys left, Joseph Chen, Nicky Rod, right? It was definitely going to be Joseph Chen in slot 4 and Nicky Rod in slot 5. There was no other way they were going to go. New Wave got to the end. They've got Giancarlo Bedoni and Luke Griffith. They went Bedoni slot 4, Griffith slot 5. I disagreed with that at the time I saw it. I've spoken to my coach, Casey, after this. He disagreed as well. We'd have done Luke in at 4, no need to get Joseph. I think Luke's got a much better shot at beating Joseph than he does of Nicky Rod. And I think Bedoni against Nicky Rod, it wouldn't be a situation where the gas tank goes and Nicky Rod can get that 10-8. I think Bedoni would have been a bit positionally better, etc. If I was New Wave, I know it sounds like I'm talking from hindsight. I'm saying before it happened, I called it. I'm going Luke 4, Bedoni 5. I know they're going to go Joseph 4, Nicky Rod 5. As it worked out, Joseph went against Bedoni, 0-0 draw, both out. And then Nicky Rod went against Luke, 0-0 draw, both out. But the difference being the Bedoni victory over Joseph was a 10-9. The Nicky Rod victory over Luke was a 10-8. Right, before we get into this tiebreaker thing, just talk about those two matches, please.
Yeah, I think Joseph did a really good job of doing what he needed to do and just getting through the match. It was going to be difficult. I don't think it was out the realms of possibility of him to submit Giancarlo, but it was going to be very difficult. There was clearly a big physicality difference. I think there was about 15 kilograms in it, but Joseph did really, really well with his guard and staying safe, and showed his level of jiu-jitsu going up against someone with the physicality and caliber of Giancarlo. But he got his job done, and I think that made New Wave lose the slight advantage they had and then made it very even and all to play for going into the finals.
Now, just on this,
in that final
before,
match, yeah, on you go.
Sorry, before we get into the Nicky Rod v Luke match, I've got something in my head I want to get out. Gordon Ryan has got a lot to say about this. If Gordon Ryan had taken part in this event and been on his team, he'd have been the last guy out here, and it would be Nicky Rod against Gordon for the win. As it is, Gordon wasn't there, so I think that takes away from all the moaning that he's currently doing. If it meant so much for him, for his team to win, get in the team, get out in the last match, and get that win against your big rival Nicky Rod. As it is, he wasn't there, he didn't do it, and I think that takes away from what he's got to say. Anyway, Calum, back to you for some match analysis.
Yeah, I think it was said in the commentary that they'd had a match before Nicky Rod had won. That one slipped my mind. I couldn't really remember that match. I'm sure it has happened, but yeah, what way it was going to go, wasn't really too sure. Luke looked a little bit bigger, a little bit more physical, but Nicky Rod's like such a good competitor. Didn't really look too rushed, even though I thought he had to get like a dominant win or a sub for B team to win. But he got that body lock, got that takedown, and then like once he's in that body lock position on the ground, things are going to go his way. They did. He was really trying to get the sub, which I thought they might have needed, but he was able to get that 10-8, which made the scores even going into it.
Okay, so at the time we all thought you needed a sub to win. I think maybe everyone other than Lachlan Giles might have thought that, because we'll do a brief explainer of what happened, but I've seen Lachlan on Instagram post that as far as he understood, and he went to the rules meetings, what the result was is what the result should have been. Anyway, we got to the scores. The teams are lined up. We think New Wave have probably edged it 3 matches to 2, right, at the time. So I thought that was going to be, New Wave have won. Then it was announced that it was a 47-47 draw because Nicky Rod had been given a 10-8 while all the other matches were 10-9. So I was like, all right, okay, so what happens now? What's the tiebreak situation? And then it's announced in a tiebreak situation, whatever happened in the last match counts, and that's the score we go with. So B team are given the win. Again, Lachlan Giles has said, I've seen on his Instagram, unless I didn't read it right, that's what he thinks should have happened. So I'm going with that. But Calum, just in a very quick minute or two, talk me through that last part of the show from your point of view.
Okay, the last 2 minutes of you speaking there on my end, I didn't really get that. Hopefully it shows up in the recording, but I'm gonna.
Yeah, I've got to reconnect.
Yeah, same thing when you're speaking now, but I'm gonna guess that you've asked my opinion on just from kind of lip reading and following along. I'm gonna guess that you've asked my opinion on the decision at the end. So yeah, I watched it later than Ross because I had some things I had to do in the day, and I was kind of watching it here and there, and then I messaged him saying that okay, the Luke Griffith and Nicky Rod match is just finished, and then I said I'll be ready to go in a minute, and I was getting ready to hear the decision either way that it went, and then they said that it went even. I thought there was maybe going to be like a tiebreaker. I wasn't fully aware of what the rule was if the judge's decision was equal, so I thought they were going to maybe do a tiebreaker. They were going to do a rematch with Nicky Rod and Luke Griffith or whoever New Wave or B Team put out. And then when I saw that was a rule, I was very happy because I wanted B Team to win. Thought it was a really good end, and I thought it was a movie-like ending. You know, like you don't really know what way it's went, and then this rule that nobody really knows about is like came out into the woodworks, and B Team won and got their end, and I was very happy for B Team and all those guys. Danaher didn't look the happiest. I don't know if he was maybe contemplating whether that was a legit rule or not. And yeah, I didn't really know that was the rule either, but it was the rule. There was a rules meeting, and people should have known about that. And yeah,